So, welcome. I think I'm gonna try to do on Wednesdays some kind of like sit down video. I'm thinking of keeping it here about-ish. This is like not entirely even. Give me just a sec. That's better. Okay, it's not the best tripod. So today what I wanted to go over on this Wednesday video is the IEP. So if you're going into school for special education, I'm sure most of you at this point, you should have at least, so hopefully have learned of an IEP. I'm going to preface this saying I am a first-year teacher. However, I have had siblings on IEPs. I have been an advocate for students on IEPs, even after high school. I would drive my mom to IEP meetings. I have 2 kids on an IEP, one for speech, one for autism spectrum disorder. And then I have another son, my youngest son is getting tested for a speech IEP. So while this might be my first year as a teacher, as a special ed teacher, I have a lot of experience with the IEP. So I wanted to go over just a few things and kind of how an IEP meeting, this is a basic IEP meeting that I would run here at the high school level. So there's different kinds of meetings. There's reevaluation meetings, there's the initial placement meetings, there's different things. For example, last week we had the reevaluation meeting for my son. So there's a bunch of different things and lots of different paperwork for different ones, but this is the basic IEP. This is the one that you're going to be doing most often. Just most often you're going to be doing this one. And because I'm in a high school, there are just a couple more things I have to do because this is a high school level. So the first thing that you want to do in an IEP meeting is offer your parents one of these. There are some schools that offer this online, but this is just the parents' procedural safeguards. This is the booklet that tells the parents of all of their rights. It tells them if there's any special schools that their kids could go to. This tells them about the due process, which is if things aren't working the way that they want it to work and they feel it should be working and the special ed team is not working with them at all, then there's a thing called due process where they can kind of take it to higher up and hopefully get issues resolved. You always want to advocate that you want them to come to you first, obviously. Don't just skip to due process. But there's a bunch of information in here, and so if you are, I can't even remember all the information in here, but if you are studying to be a special ed teacher at least once in your life, I do recommend, you can find it online. It's called Procedural Safeguards. Read it. I should probably actually read it again just to refresh. Most of the time, parents will not even want this packet. They'll say, no, I'm good, I have a lot of these, especially here at the high school level. They've been doing this for so many years, so they just don't feel like they need to do it anymore. One second. So that's the procedural safeguards. You always want, there's a place on the IEP that you can mark if they've accepted it or if you offered it and they declined it. So that is one of the things, the first things you do at the meeting. Before even the meeting takes place, you have to schedule the meeting. You have to call the parents, and then you have to get together the team. So the team consists of an LEA. An LEA can be a bunch of different kinds of people. There's different trainings that people can take to become the LEA at the school. At my school, it is the counselors in charge of that alphabet last name is that student's LEA. In most elementary schools, the LEA would be like the principal, or if there's a vice principal, that could be an LEA. Any principal or vice principal is considered an LEA. People from like the district, maybe your district supervisor, if they're coming to a meeting, they could be the LEA. It's just the person representing the district is the LEA. And so, like I said, in most cases, especially in the high school level, that's going to be your guidance counselors. They're going to be your LEAs. Another person that you have to have at the meeting is the parent. The parent has to be there. You can phone conference in. If you've been watching this, you know about the issues that I had with my son's IEP, but you can phone conference into a meeting, and your parents can do that, and there's a way to mark that they did, but they do need to be present in some way. There's very rare circumstances when they're not present, and that's if they're just not showing up to the meeting, and then eventually you have to hold the meeting without them, but that's after constant meeting dates being canceled because of a no-show and not being able to contact them. Then you just hold the meeting. The special ed teacher needs to be there. That kind of makes sense. It's an IEP meeting. You need to be there. The special ed teacher needs to be there. You also have to have a regular ed teacher there. Now, if a regular ed teacher cannot be there, there is a paper that you can fill out that will excuse them. This should be filled out prior to the meeting, and the parents need to give permission for that absence. If a parent is like, no, I need the gen ed teacher there, we cannot hold this meeting without the gen ed teacher, then that's just the way, then you cancel the meeting and you reschedule it. So, but what you can do is you can call up the parent saying, hey, so-and-so has said, and this can go for anyone, especially not you. You can't not be there. Like, you need to be there. But if anyone in the meeting can't be there, then you can say, hey, they can't be here. Is that okay? Do you want to cancel? Do you want to reschedule this? Do you want to hold the meeting without them? And if they're like, yeah, we can hold a meeting without them, you would fill out a paper like this. Now, this one's specific to my district. I'll try to hold it up a little bit better. But this is just a consent for IEP team member absence and excusal. Every district has probably their own kind of paperwork. This one's specific to my district, but you fill out this paperwork and then you get your LEA to sign it, and it should be done before the meeting. Now, I had a meeting just today where I didn't do that. It's so naughty already. I had this meeting scheduled for last week, and then the parent canceled and asked to reschedule, so we did for today, and then teachers finally got back to me today saying, oh no, I can't make it today. And so when the parent came in, I did say, hey, this person cannot be here, we can reschedule. Now, the reason why I was kind of okay doing it that way today is because there were 2 IEP meetings being held today with the same parent, and so we had everyone for one student and not everyone for the other student. But I do need to fill this out, and I do need to get this into the IEP. So, an excusal form. So if a member cannot be there, the LEA needs to be there, or an LEA needs to be there, and you need to be there, and a parent needs to be there. So pretty much this is for the gen ed teacher. And maybe the speech teacher if there's a speech service. Which that's another issue with my son's meeting. They didn't tell me until the day of that the speech teacher wasn't gonna be there. It's okay. I had all of her goals beforehand, so. But there's that. But before the meeting, you'll send out this notice of meeting. So you're going to fill out everyone who's going to be coming to the meeting, where the meeting's located, the date of the meeting, the time of the meeting, all of that. You're going to fill this out, and you should send it home. Now, for me, what I do is I actually scan it and I email it to the parents. So that's how I send out my notice of meeting. For my son's school, they just give it to the student, and the student brings it home. Just, you need to get this to the parent somehow. So this is just the notice, hey, we're having a meeting, notice of meeting. Then this will kind of be a little bit more familiar, maybe. So this is the IEP form, again, for my district. Every district could have different layouts and stuff like that, but it's going to be the same kind of information. The first part of the box, you guys can see this, maybe. This first box up here, that's just stating that this IEP was given to the parent in their their language. And so if you have a translator there, you need to mark there that you have a translator. If it's given to them in their language that they speak, you just move on. And then the next parts, focus on me. Right here, this is talking about resource services. Now in my district, there are kind of 3 resource services that you can provide. You can provide reading resources, writing resources, and math resources. Those are the 3 that you can provide, and you can provide time for that. Time for this IEP is not necessarily, since I'm in high school, it's not the entire class period. What it is, it's the individualized time. And so I might have an hour class, but I'm really only spending 20 minutes with a student in either a small group or one-on-one, helping them with the concept. So maybe 20 minutes daily, kind of a thing. So but you have to give a time for everything, and you have to make sure that that time is being filled. So if it's a behavioral thing, you need to make sure that that time is being filled, kind of a thing. So there's that. And then there's also related services. So this is where if you have like speech, if you have occupational, those kind of services, you would put that on here. Again, you would have a time. Now that time also has to have a location. Is this going to be a push-in service? So you are going to the general education setting and you're assisting students in the gen ed setting. So I have a co-taught math class. Their time is given to them in a general education setting. My resource students who just have me, that's given in a specialized setting, which is my classroom. So there's different settings, and you have to mark what settings it is. And then you have to mark, is this time being given daily, weekly, monthly, or others. I have a student with a vision thing, and that's given yearly, kind of a thing. So that's 4 times yearly. So there's your resource, which is reading, writing, and math. And then there is additional services. After that is where you go into the different accommodations that your student would be getting. So a lot of my students get the use of a calculator. That's automatically on there. If they have a math IEP, I throw in the use of a calculator. That is automatically on there. Some students need preferential sitting. Some of those students need to be sitting next to a teacher. One nice thing that my district has for us, it's good and bad. It's this paper right here. This is just a bunch of accommodations that you might give a student. And there's different categories. So there's environment and setting, lesson presentation and materials, assignments and worksheets, testing and grading, organization, and behavior and socialization. So different kind of accommodations that you would give a student in those categories. There are other accommodations that you could give, but this is just kind of like the general list. The good thing is sometimes you have a hard time thinking, and so sometimes I will pull this out and just look over and like, does my student need this? Does my student need this? On here, there are 4 lines. If I get to the point that there's more than 4, I put on here see attached document, and we pull out one of these and we start marking this. If it's 4 or less, I keep it all on the one sheet, because I don't like pulling this out in an IEP meeting, because then the parents look at it and some parents think, oh, this is a shopping list of accommodations. And they'll be like, I want this one for my student, I want this one for my student, I want this one for my student. Not every accommodation is good for every single student. And so you have to have that discussion as a team, like, would this be good? At the high school level, you want to avoid at all costs modifying anything. You don't want to modify a thing, because if you modify too much, they're no longer getting a diploma. They're getting just like a certificate, like they completed, like they didn't actually get a diploma for high school. They're not getting their GED. And so you want to be hesitant pulling out a shopping list of accommodations for students for that reason. So you want to kind of think beforehand, what are good accommodations? What does the student really need? But still have the parents' input and be like, is there anything else you can think of? And just have the input of the team. Today I had a really great meeting where we were able to do that. Speech pathologist was able to really input a lot for me. The parent was able to input, and we really had a good amount of accommodations for a student. But don't just pull this out saying, hey, what accommodations do you want for your student? Here's a list, just check off what you want. That's not good. You don't do that. So that's my accommodations spiel. So after you come up with the accommodations, then you kind of move on. Like I said, this is a regular setting one. So then we go into the special factors by the team. And so this is where you list if there's any other special things needed. And so one option is behavioral strategies. Are behavioral strategies needed? If you have a behavior goal, then yes, and you'll say that they're addressed in the IEP. If they're not, you say, hey, not needed at this time. Then there's language or limited English proficient students. So if English is not their primary language. So I have a few students that are also in ELL or ESL, English second language. And so I would be marking a ESL student. We need to make sure that we mark that. And then there is on here Braille. Are they blind? Do they need Braille? If not, you say no. Communication services, so that's speech. They don't have a speech goal, you mark not needed. And assistive technology, if they don't use any assistive technology, then again, you just say none needed. The next portion talks about the extended school year. Extended school year is different than summer school. Extended school year is something that if you have a student who you teach and they seem to be getting it and they go on Christmas break and they come back and they know nothing, they've lost everything, they do not retain the information, then that long summer break might be very detrimental to them, and they'll need extended school year to maintain those skills, not necessarily to learn new skills, but to maintain them, because going away would be very detrimental. It is very rare in my setting that I will do extended school year. Most students, they can maintain, like they lose a little bit, but we can, and how long does it take to get it back? If it takes just as long to get it back, then you're kind of in trouble and you'll need to consider extended school year. But summer school, especially in the high school level, that's optional. If you want to get ahead and take an extra few classes, if you want to do driver's ed in summer school, those aren't free. Like, you have to pay for those. Extended school year, that's a service that's not, you don't pay for, kind of a thing. So you don't want to present it to them as summer school. It is extended school year. So that's the next section. And then we go into the annual review of placement. Is it your initial placement? So this would be your very first one, which we're saying that this one that we're talking about right now is not. So we would do either maintain current placement or change current placement. And if you're changing the placement, you need to provide written prior notice of the change of placement beforehand. So like if you took testing and you're like, nope, they don't qualify anymore, you need to give parents written prior notice. But we're saying this is a normal one, just a normal general one that you would run. And so we would just mark, we're maintaining the current placement. The next portion is the written prior notice for free appropriate public education. There's just a couple of things that you have to mark here. Pretty much anything you talk about in the IEP. So if you're talking about student being tardy a lot and stuff like that, you would just write parents' concerns in this area, stuff like that. And so there's just the following other options were considered / refused for these reasons. And I just write what we talked about here. And then other factors relevant to this proposal. Most of the time I just put none at this time. And this is where we put the procedural safeguards. There's a box. Did they accept them after you offered, or did they decline them? And then it's on, there is the signing of the IEP. So people sign it. Before you even do that though, that's just the basic IEP form. There is a testing assessment addendum. So this is where kindergarten through 12th grade, you put what tests they get. These are like state tests and stuff like that. And do they have to take them like every other student, or are there accommodations that need to be in place? Most of the time, they'll be taking it just like any other student. Well, in our state, because all of their accommodations that they would need, unless it's like an alternate location or something like that, it's built into the test. So unless it's in like an alternate location or some other like major thing, we would just put that they would a standard administration. So there's that. Now, because I am in high school level, end of middle school, high school level, you have to start going through transition stuff, because there's an end. There's the senior year when they graduate. And what happens after that? What are their goals after that? You want them to be thinking of that. And so what I have my students do is they take the survey at the beginning of the year, and we go through what they want to do. Do they want to live on their own? Different things like that. And then we fill out this paper. This is the individualized transition plan. So this is a required state document that goes in with the IEP for all my students. So it just talks about different assessments, and this could be math tests, reading tests, writing tests, the survey, different things, but you have to have one in each of them. The student survey covers all of the different areas. There's education and instruction, employment and career, community, independent living, skills, adult living, if appropriate. So it goes through all of those. And then on here it just says post-secondary goals. Upon completion, I, the student, will work at or as. Where do they want to work? What do they want to do? Do they want to be a fashion designer? Do they want to be a teacher? What do they want to do? What's after high school? And you put it there. And then you have to put in the courses that are required for them to graduate high school. And so usually I focus on what they're doing right now. Their math, their English. Those are required for graduation, so I put those. And then there's post-secondary training and education. So they'll earn a bachelor's, they'll earn a certificate. What will they earn? Where will they go to school after this? Like, what comes after? And so what's required for that? So maybe they only want to get a job training as a plumber. Well, we have a technical college here, so maybe they're going to go and they're going to get their certificate to be a plumber from this technical college, and they'll get that certificate. Well, what are they going to need? Do they need welding skills? Do they need, we offer welding classes and stuff like that. Like, what do they need in order to accomplish that goal? And the last one's independent living. Are they going to live on their own? Are they going to live with parents? We hope that eventually every student leaves their parents' house. So I always put that they're going to take, we have a class called Adult Roles in Financial Literature. And so it's a really great course for them to take. Maybe they will be taking a home ec class. Maybe they'll take a cooking class. Whatever class will help them become more independent. So those are the different courses. And then on here, this is where we say, hey, they're gonna get a high school diploma. Or are they just going to get a certificate of completion? So all of my students, we're aiming for that diploma. We don't want them to get a certificate of completion, because that doesn't do them any good. They want that diploma. And so we work really hard for them to get that diploma. So then on the back side of it, then we go through the services. The first one, which is education, that's where you're gonna write those goals again. Those same goals that you wrote before on your IEP. For the IEP, there's goals that you have to write. You're gonna write those same goals here. So maybe there's a math goal, and then you'll put that the special ed department's responsible for it, and it's goal number 1. Maybe there's a reading goal. Special ed department's responsible for it, goal number 2. Stuff like that. Then there's career and employment. Now these can be pretty much anything. This is where you really have that conversation with hopefully the student, if the student's there in the high school level, and with the parent. And so today we were talking about, hey, is it about time that maybe they find a summer job for next summer? So is it about time for them to find that summer job if the parent's like, yeah, it is. It's that time. So we'll put on to apply for part-time positions. And that would be on the responsibility of the family and the student. And then there's community. What kind of things do they do in the community? Maybe that would be some service things. What kind of things do we want them to do in the community that would help them reach their secondary goal? And that could just be out there talking to people and stuff like that. Adult living and independent living. So a lot of the time I'm like, what kind of chores do they do at home? Do they cook their own meals? Today I wrote on one that the goal is for the student is to plan, prepare, and clean up 1 family dinner a month. That is a really good adult skill, being able to cook and not just throw together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So that's where you really have that conversation with the parents of the different areas, like, hey, what goals can we go for this year? What do we want for the student to be doing and stuff like that. So that's what that's for. The next section on this paper is just other transition services or agencies there. Most of the time, again, I mark no. It's a very rare thing that you're going to need a special agency to come in and guide the student. Like, this is going to be a student that really just cannot seem to get there on their own. They need that extra boost, and then you'll pull out those certain agencies, and you have to get prior permission to have those agencies at the meeting. And that's not a typical meeting for me. That's going to be like your juniors, seniors, not necessarily. I work with mostly freshmen and sophomores. And then transfer of rights on this paper. So when a student turns 18, they're responsible for their own IEP. Like, we talk to the parent, not the parent, the student, to schedule the IEP meeting. So if they're 18, they're responsible for their IEP. No ifs, ands, or buts, they are. And so we just mark the date that they're turning 18 on here, the fact that we've talked about it. There's a paper that has to get signed. If it's already been signed, you just put the date that it's been signed. If you're signing it that day, you write that date. But when they turn 18, they're responsible for their own IEP. And then just student participation is the last part. Did the student participate? Were they at the IEP meeting? If they were at the IEP meeting, great, that's awesome, that's what we want. It doesn't happen very often, honestly, for me, which I wish it would happen more. And then there is student to not participate in the IEP meeting. And if you do mark this, how did they give their input? And so I always they filled out the student survey, which is what they did, and I talked to them about that. And then at the very bottom is just notice of 1 year follow-up. So if the student is graduating, then you mark that you've informed them that somebody will be contacting them to see how things are going about a year after they graduate. Those are the papers for a basic, other than writing your goals, your PLAF and your goals. Those are your basic papers that you fill out. Now for goals and stuff, you'll be learning about this and stuff, but there's different paperwork for each district that they want you to use and different formats. I never really learned about a PLAF. A PLAF is kind of talking about the present levels and what are they good at, what's their struggles, why do they need this goal. It brings in their transitional goal, and then like it talks about the actual goals of what you're working on that year and how are you going to measure those goals. Are you going to do this in tests? How are you going to provide that information to the parents? Are you going to do it during parent-teacher conferences? Are they going to be able to see it on the grades? Like, what do you do to convey the goals and how they're progressing through the year? Because an IEP, really, those goals should only last a year. They should be able to complete your goals within a year. So that is, I feel like I've talked a lot because I have probably almost 30 minutes at this point, if not more. But that is your basic IEP meeting. There are different kinds of IEP meetings, but this is the one that you're gonna have more often than not, and it's pretty much the same for elementary school, except for the fact that I have the transition stuff because I'm high school. So transition doesn't have to be part of it for elementary. And most of middle school, it's 8th grade that they really start that transition stuff. Like when they turn 15 is when that starts happening. Or 14. I can't remember. I just know I do it for all of them. I think it's 14. 14 it starts. So, but I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna start wrapping up what I'm doing here in this room for the night so I can go home. And I will see you guys later.